Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. My name is Charlotte Snyder, and my pronouns are she, her. Please take this time to silence all your electronic devices. I would like to read a welcome to you by Dan Lambert. You are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You are welcome here to join us as we proclaim worth in our spiritual journeys. You are welcome to join us as we sing songs that uplift our very beings. You are welcome to join us in community as we learn, live, uplift our very beings. All are welcome as we worship that which gives us meaning and value, no matter what you call this building, this hour, or this gathering of people. Excuse me. We worship as one body, illuminated by the light of this chalice. Welcome. We've got some announcements today. For the service today, please hold your applause. Don't clap. Allow your own thoughts and feelings to be felt, remembering the rich stories you experienced with the members and friends we are honoring today. At the end of the service, we will be gathering in the memorial garden, right outside there, to spread the ashes of Billy Cutchins, who died during the pandemic, and we were unable to have a gathering in her honor. I know that many of you are concerned about the clearing that's happened next door. No worries. The board is looking into this, and we will be sure to keep the integrity of our own property. Well, we are having circle dinners again, so please sign up on the table out front, or you can email Linda Cobb. Our service for next week is going to be a bread communion service. This year, we are pleased to have Audrey Preston, an active and engaging member of the UUCP, leading our service. Like our congregants, bread comes in many wide varieties. Each civilization that has ever lived on the earth has made some type of bread. This communion service reminds us that we all need food to live, that we must share our one earth which feeds us all, and that on our purpose is to share our unique gifts with one another so we can all be fed, both physically and spiritually. So I hope you all will make it next Sunday. It is going to be a good service. In times of darkness, we stumble towards the tiny flame. In times of cold, we seek the warming fire. In times of repression, we reach for the lamp of truth. In times of loss, we pray for the comforting light. In times of joy, we light a candle of celebration. Spirit of life, as we kindle this light, help us find what we need this day.
Charlotte is one of our newer members and has jumped in with both feet to participate in our congregation. And in saying that, this service is also about many of our new members, and we'll talk about that just a little bit later in the service. Oh, the opening words. You know, we have such wonderful, brilliant, intelligent people in our congregation, and I went to one of them, who happens to be a poet. We have many of those as well. And I said, could you possibly pull together a poem for this service? And humbly she said, oh, I wouldn't know what to do with that. And I said, maybe you could think about it. There's no pressure. You can get back to me if it doesn't work for you. Within 5 minutes, she looked at me and, well, I'm already thinking about it. And I thought, yep, we got one. So this poetry is by Margaret McLaren. And she sent it to me this week. And once again, we will have the joy of hearing her voice through poetry. Beloved members of the flock, now departed and off the clock, your lives had meaning, your lives gave love. You're part of the universe, soaring above. Billy and Barbara, Robert and Rob, Carol Trotter and Neil Cobb, and sadly, many others, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers. Our thoughts are of you on this Day of the Dead, All Saints, All Souls. We'll reminisce, tears will be shed, but we prefer to share laughter instead. From all of us who here remain, soar in peace until we meet again.
Please stand as we recite our covenants, and stay standing for our opening hymn. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We are going to sing We the People by Rob Palme.
We paused it for a minute. There's a little history with this. Rob wrote the words and put some music to it a little bit, and Laura Keith King embellished it, and they created this over the COVID. And so we, in honor of Rob, we are asking you to sing with him. It will be on here. It may not be real loud, but join whatever words you hear. Okay. Now we have a time for all ages. This is a book that came across my path when I was raising children and when I was working as a therapist. And I found it to be a beautiful rendition of helping children understand life and death. For me, it deepened my understanding as well, probably more than it ever helped them. It's called The Fall of Freddie the Leaf. It's a story, life for all ages, by Leo Buscaglia, who is no longer with us, but has written a lot of beautiful work. Spring had passed, and so had summer. Freddie the Leaf had grown. His large midsection was strong, and his 5 extensions were firm and very pointed. He had first appeared in spring as a small sprout. I have a small one here. Here he was. On a rather large branch near the top of a very tall tree. Freddie was surrounded by hundreds of other leaves, just like himself, or so it seemed. Soon he discovered that no 2 leaves were alike, even though they were on the same tree. Alfred was the leaf next to him. Ben was the leaf on the right side. And Claire, wow, she was the lovely leaf overhead. We had all grown up together. They had learned to dance in the spring breezes, bask lazily in the summer sun, and wash off in the cooling rains. But it was Daniel. It was definitely Daniel, who was Freddie's best friend. He was the largest leaf on the tree. He was the largest leaf on the limb, and seemed to have been there before anyone else. It appeared to Freddie that Daniel was also the wisest among them. It was Daniel who told them that they were part of a tree. It was Daniel who explained that they were growing in a public park. It was Daniel who told them that the tree had strong roots, which were hidden in the ground below. He explained about the birds who came to sit on the branch and sing morning songs. He explained about the sun and the moon and the stars and the seasons. Freddie loved being a leaf. He loved his branch, his light leafy friends, his place high in the sky, the wind that jostled him about, the sun rays that warmed him, the moon that covered him with soft, white shadows. Summer had been especially nice. The long, hot days felt good, and the warm nights were peaceful and dreamy. There were many people in the park that summer. They often came and sat under Freddie's tree. Daniel told him that giving shade was part of his purpose. "What's a purpose?" Freddie had asked. "A reason for being," Daniel answered. "To make things more pleasant for others is a reason for being. To make shade for old people who come to escape the heat of their homes is a reason for being. To provide a cool place for children to come and play. To fan with our leaves the picnickers who come to eat on checkered tablecloths. These are all reasons for being." Freddie especially liked the old people. They sat so quietly on this cool grass and hardly ever moved. They talked in whispers of times past. The children were fun too, even though they sometimes tore holes on the bark of our tree or carved their names into it. Still, it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch them move so fast and to laugh so much. But Freddie's summer soon passed. It vanished on an October night. He had never felt it so cold. All the leaves shivered with the cold. They were coated with a thin layer of white, which quickly melted and left them dew-drenched and sparkling in the morning sun. Again, it was Daniel who explained that they had experienced their first frost, the sign that it was fall and that winter would soon come. Almost at once, the whole tree, in fact, the whole park was transformed into a blaze of color. There was hardly a green leaf left. Alfred had turned a deep yellow. Ben had become a bright orange. Claire had become blazing red. And Daniel, a deep purple. And Freddie was red and gold and blue. How beautiful they all looked. Freddie and his friends had made their tree a rainbow. Why did we turn different colors? Freddie asked. When we are all on the same tree. Well, each of us is different. We have had different experiences. We have faced the sun differently. We have cast shade differently. Why should we not have different colors? Daniel said, matter-of-factly. Daniel told Freddie that this wonderful season was called fall. One day, a very strange thing happened. The same reasons that in the past had made them dance began to push and pull at their stems, almost as if they were angry. This caused some of the leaves to be torn from their branches and swept up in the wind, tossed about, and dropped softly to the ground. All the leaves became frightened. What's happening? They asked each other in whispers. It's what happens in the fall, Daniel said. It's time for leaves to change their home. Some people call it to die. Will we all die? Freddie asked. Oh, yes, Daniel answered. Everything dies, no matter how big or how small, how weak or strong. We first do our job. We experience the sun and the moon, the wind and the rain. We learn to dance and to laugh, and then we die. I won't die, said Freddie, with determination. Will you, Daniel? Oh, yes, answered Daniel, when it is my time. When's that? Asked Freddie. Oh, no one knows for sure, Daniel responded. Freddie noticed that the other leaves continued to fall, and he thought it must be their time. He saw that some of the leaves lashed back at the wind before they fell. Others simply let go and dropped quietly. Soon the tree was almost bare. I'm afraid to die, Freddie told Daniel. I don't know what's down there. We all fear what we don't know, Freddie. It's natural, Daniel reassured him. Yet you were not afraid when spring became summer. You were not afraid when summer became fall. They were natural changes. Why should you be afraid of the season of death? Does the tree die too? Freddie asked. Someday, but there is something stronger than the tree. It is life that lasts forever, and we are all a part of life. Where will we go when we die? No one knows for sure. That's the great mystery. Will we return in the spring? We may not, but life will. Then what has been the reason for all of this? Freddie continued to question. Why were we here at all if we only have to fall and die? Daniel answered in his matter-of-fact way. It's been about the sun and the moon. It's been about happy times together. It's been about the shade and the old people and the children. It's been about the colors in fall. It's been about the seasons. Isn't that enough? That afternoon, in the golden light of dusk, Daniel let go. He fell effortlessly. He seemed to smile peacefully as he fell. Goodbye for now, Freddie, he said. Then Freddie was alone. The only leaf left on his branch. The first snow fell the following morning. It was soft, white, and gentle, but it was bitter cold. There was hardly any sun that day, and the day was very short. Freddie found himself losing his color and becoming brittle. It was constantly cold, and the snow weighed heavily upon him. At dawn, the wind came that took Freddie from his branch. It didn't hurt at all. He felt himself float quietly, gently, and softly downward. As he fell, he saw the whole tree for the very first time. How strong and firm it was. He was sure that it would live for a long time, and he knew that he had been a part of its life, and it made him proud. Freddie landed on a clump of snow. It somehow felt soft and even warm. In this new position, he was more comfortable than he had ever been. He closed his eyes and fell asleep. He did not know that spring would follow winter and that the snow would melt into water. He did not know that what appeared to be his useless, dried self would join the water and serve to make the tree stronger. Most of all, he did not know that there, asleep in the tree and the ground, were already plans for new leaves in the spring, and thus the beginning. And now we will sing the children out. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
It is now time for our offering. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work, and we are grateful for each and every gift. May you give in love and in hope. If you have any joys and sorrows, please also put them in the offering basket at this time.
We have one joy and sorrow, and today we have Joni, and it's beautiful. She not only wrote her name, but she told me how to say it, and wrote it in whatever that is, where you let people know how to specifically. Where is Joni? Welcome, Joni. Good. And she's asking for strength as I continue to fight through depression and anxiety. Thankful for my family who has been my pillar through this time. And we light a candle for her. And then we will light a last candle of joy and or concern and sorrow for those things that are on our hearts and unspoken at this time.
There's a gathering of spirits, there's a festival of friends, and we'll take them where we left off before we meet again. Can't explain, we couldn't if I tried, how the only things we carry are the things we hold.
How do you create a service like this? How do you create a service that follows a pandemic of 2 to 3 years that kept us in our homes and kept us away from gathering and kept us away from celebrating together in a physical sense? And honestly, in volunteering or agreeing to do this service, it never occurred to me the depth of pain that I would touch as I created this. And I didn't create it, many people did. There are many people that created this service and that create each service But today, there are many voices heard in this service. And I could not possibly mention all of the voices, but I hope that you will hear it in your own heart, the voice that it touches you, and the stories that you remember, and the stories of their lives and how they touched you, remembering that you also touched them. This congregation not only went through and survived and is thriving after COVID, but we also have major changes in our leadership with going from a part-time minister to a lay-led service, a lay-led church last summer. And then we looked back and have looked back at some of the people through their own life changes have changed the leadership and have moved due to what was best for them. I happen to think that maybe COVID helped that in some way. It sped up some of our thoughts of being alone or afraid or far away or close to, or who we connected with or didn't. And so this congregation also has experienced a change of some significant people that are living, but they're living differently and they're not in our daily lives. And so I'm going to hold those up, and we're going to light one candle for them in community together. We had a choir director at one time, and since that time, Laura has stepped up, but her name was Olivia Bouliard. And we also had a musician on a regular basis, and that was Denise Angelo, that we do not have regularly anymore for various reasons. And then along the path, Leslie and Bob Ortiz. Bob had decided at one point to stop being a part of this congregation, but Leslie hadn't. She was still active in the choir, but they had music concerts here, and they provided a lot of vibrance to this community as well. Bob also was quite a singer and sang in the choir. Tara Shute, during the pandemic, relocated out of state and still works for us remotely, but physically she's not here and she's not in our building, which is a significant change when it comes to things that we need done in the building. We lost some significant people in our children's RE program and our family program in a broader sense. Emma Mulvaney and her daughter Maeve were very active and created lots of things, not only in the children's RE program, but also for campouts and activities with families. Along with them, Pam, Mark, Valerie, and Will Levitt were also primary in creating Creative's ideas and being a presence in our church with CRE and family activities. I couldn't possibly cover the last grouping of people enough. But Erin Renfro and her husband Jeffrey relocated. And if there was a backbone person of this church that nobody knew existed, but met no matter what, was Erin Renfro. She still works remotely for us. She does some significant things. However, her presence is greatly missed. And she was our historian. She did office management. She helped supervise the office attendant. She did everything but wash floors, and she may have done that as well. And then we had a couple decide that they needed to go live closer to their children, and that was Mary Lee and Jerry Donnelly. And there isn't enough to say about them. They were at everything, and they loved this church. And the one reason they did not want to leave was because of this community. That is the one thing that would have kept them here, was this community. They were at everything. If it was a potluck, if it was on Zoom, if it was Friday night, if it was dressed up, If it was dressed down, if it was Saturday and preparing for an event on Sunday, it was Jerry and Mary Lee. And they are greatly missed. And I have to say, personally, she ran Sunday services, and I totally miss her personally as I work with Sunday services.
And building and grounds.
Oh, and Jerry did building and grounds, which is not just a matter of making sure the lights are on. So it's anybody who has a home or has tried to keep up with your home, you know exactly, and magnify that by 20.
And the trust.
And they were part of the trust. And I am going to continue to say that many things will not be said in this service, and those are significant things because many of these people were also on the board, and so many people were behind the scenes. And you will find that true in the little snippets that I'm going to say about each of the people that have died. And so I'm going to pause at points for you to reflect on your own thoughts and your own feelings about each person. I actually wrote them a letter, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're going to honor their presence with us in this community. And we went back several years because we were not able to honor them in community, which we do at this time of the year, for the people who died in that active year. And since we did not do it during COVID for many people, we have brought forth many of those people so that we could honor them in our community today. So I invite you to remember your own stories with them. I invite you to think about the stories and the experiences that you had with each of them, and they with you. And just know that we could all speak today about each one of them in our own way, because no matter whether you knew them personally or you had ever worked with them, they have shown up to be a part of this community ongoingly. So I'm going to say the name, and then I'm going to allow a moment of silence, and Charlotte is going to light a candle for each one of them, and then I'll share a few words. And we're going to start with Paul Cutchins. Paul Cutchins was part of this community part of the time. He was known as Potluck Paul because he always came for potlucks. He played golf on Sunday mornings usually, until the time that he could no longer play golf. And he showed up many, many more times. I asked somebody what they thought about Paul, and they said, I remember his bald head. But the one thing that he camped and he fished and he and his wife traveled, but there was never a time that I didn't see a sparkle in his eye when he talked about his wife, Billy. If he ever talked about Billy, there was a light that came that has no words. And as they aged, they had children. They had several together. Each of them had brought to their marriage children. But as they aged, there was a young woman from this community that they adopted. And they did not allow the candy bowl to run out at their house because Lisa Hudson might want some. Paul in particular, was dedicated to Lisa Hudson. Judy Freeman. I did not know this, but she was quite a dancer. She loved to dance. She liked to travel. She was an artist. And she made just wonderful connections with people. And there were people of this community, and you know who you are, that sat with her hours and hours during a time of her failing. She spent time with one particular family, Pam and Deb, throughout her life and also during her end of life as a member of that family in cooperation. Neil Cobb. He loved his family, but I think it was a tie with theater. He loved theater, he loved drama, he loved being involved with the theater. And he often created it here in our community. He served on the board of the church. He was on the search committee. He had many roles in our church and participated most of his life here. Billy Cutchins. We've had several matriarchs of this community, and this one was inspirational, compassionate, welcoming. She loved genealogy. She met her husband Paul on an airplane, and I believe they were flying in a hurricane. And then he swore she couldn't get on the plane, and his officer said she would. And she rode that plane with him the rest of their lives. You couldn't be with Billy without feeling some level of compassion. She always listened and understood. There didn't have to be words. Reverend Elaine Booker, and it wasn't Booker, it's Booker. Reverend Elaine Booker, lo and behold, our church seems to have a magnet to retired ministers. They go through the ministry of some congregation, and she was a Methodist minister. She was ordained in the Methodist Church, a woman ordained in the Methodist Church. I'm sure she was one of the first. But we have a magnet that seems to attract retired ministers. They never become full-time members of the church because of their obligation for their retirement, but their activities and their beliefs began to fall in the line of UUCP, began to fall in the line of Unitarian Universalists as they matured and looked at life differently. We've had many of them come and be very active people in our congregation. She was formidable. You knew what she believed, and she lived what she believed. And when I asked Mary Lee, who Mary Lee and Jerry were very involved with Reverend Booker, she lived that way till the very last moment. Formidable, educated, informed, and spoke what she needed. Carol Trotter. She and her husband were active with the Coast Guard. They loved living in this area and being involved with boats. She was a visionary and helped with retreats, and she worked on our mission statement. And she passed away pretty suddenly and unexpectedly with complications from COVID. Barbara Goggins. another matriarch of this community. She was one of the first people I met here. She was on the membership committee. I think she probably had been in charge of every committee in this church, and if she wasn't, she made sure something got done, washed the floors, scrubbed the floors, probably with a toothbrush. Barbara thought ahead. She was definitely a visionary. She could see what was coming before we knew it. She would project and give us guiding lights along the way. She helped establish the trust, knowing that long-term stability of this church depended on not only its members, but the people who loved it and lived it and wanted it to continue. I offered something one time and she said, "Oh, no, we can't do that." And I thought, okay. And I watched her work. She made things happen simply. The way I had suggested was way too complicated, and she was right. She would often say, "Many hands make light work." So you never, ever said no to Barbara Goggins. If Barbara Goggins asked you or called you on the phone, the answer was going to be yes. Can you bring some wine? Yes. Can you bring cups? Yes. Can you show up at 9? Yes. And she was devoted, and more than devoted, to Michael Newcomb, and he to her. "Michael?" "Yes, Miss Goggins." "What can I do for you, Miss Goggins? What do you want, Miss Goggins?" One person in particular remembers dark chocolate-covered pretzels that she would bring, and they were delicious. She was also one of those people that lived her beliefs. She was strong about education. She supported and lived the things that she loved. She loved the arts. She supported that. She loved any form of education. She was a teacher. And she supported educational endeavors. I'm not sure that I came to this church ever and Barbara wasn't here on Sunday, unless she was sick. But she was always here. Robert Williams. He went by Bob. Sang in the choir. He was a man of few words, and he shared his time and his heart. And he developed a companion here in our community. And they enjoyed time together in his later years and her later years as well. Monty Montcastle was not a member of our church, but he spoke from the podium many times. He's also was a retired Methodist minister. He loved his wife dearly. He was dedicated to learning and questioning. When he spoke and wrote, which he is also an author, he always had an inquisitive mind. And when he presented here, he presented with an inquisitive mind. His wife, Kay, is still living. And Rob Palme. He had a very dry sense of humor. He was a big storyteller. He became well known on Friday nights, social hour evidently. He showed up all the time. He was instrumental in developing or getting started our art gallery in the conference room. He was a poet and extremely intellectual as well as intelligent. I mentioned earlier that I wrote a letter to them, and this is the response that I got from them. This is a collective response. Dear friends and family of UUCP, thank you for gathering together on this day to honor each of us. But we want you to know a few things. We too honor you. We grew our lives by participating in this congregation. We developed our minds, stretched our thoughts, our hearts, as well as the deeper part of our being. We learned to develop compassion for others. You provided a landing pad for us to launch new ideas and try new dreams. We were supported by your grace. Each person in this congregation, before us, while we were here, and now moving forward, are part of the vision that we also hold dear to us. We grew in wisdom, listening to others, sharing our lives together in times that were delightful, fun, and uplifting, as well as painful, sorrowful, and many difficult journeys at times. We grew in spirit when we were downtrodden. You lifted us up. You provided food for our very being in spirit and soul. We grew in developing a level of understanding and grace. We are all on a journey, and even though they may be different, and yet maybe not so different, we're all traveling life together. We grew in our bodies, even as our physical bodies began to change shape. We began to lack endurance. We altered the size of our bodies and our abilities. You were there to provide assistance we may not even have known that we needed. We experienced your presence. You were with us on our journey. Thank you for continuing the vision of this church, and we cherish what you will continue to be and do. And most of all, in closing, remember the heart and welcoming you received from this beautiful community. There are new people coming, perhaps for what you too found here in this community. Cherish them, embrace them, and offer them the landing pad that you once offered us. With love from those who you loved and left before you. And I invite you to take a deep breath. And we will stand together and sing our closing hymn, followed by closing words. Come sing a song with me, page 346, and we will do verses 1 and 4.
Oh, thank you.
Sing a song with me.
Bring you
You can remain standing, please. This is what we do with our faith. Live in this world knowing that we will lose each other, loving despite the hard bargain it demands of us, doing what we can so that truth may be safely lived, measuring our faith by the difference we have made, building up faith communities to continue after we are gone. Thank you.